On behalf of the Office of Public Engagement at Memorial University, I'd like to welcome you to this newest installment of Just Ask, a web series where we talk about different approaches to public engagement at Memorial. My name is Andreae Callanan, and I'm a PhD candidate in the Department of English at Memorial and a program support at the Office of Public Engagement. I'm delighted today to be speaking with Rochelle Baker. Rochelle is the Manager of Communications, Partnerships, and Research Exchange Groups at the Newfoundland and Labrador Centre for Applied Health Research in Memorial's Faculty of Medicine. With a degree in Communication Studies and French, Rochelle has worked for over 20 years as a communications professional in both the academic and private sectors. At NLCAHR, she pursues her passion for connecting people who share an interest in health and well-being. She loves making introductions and starting conversations among community partners and people with lived experience, policymakers and healthcare workers, academic researchers and learners at Memorial. Her goal is to facilitate an open exchange of knowledge, to build capacity for more and better health research, and to make the very best health evidence accessible to a wide variety of people. Rochelle describes herself as a pollinator among communities of interest, buzzing away in an effort to help ideas bloom. She is honored to work every day with so many talented academic and community partners who are dedicated to improving health and health care in Newfoundland and Labrador. So Rochelle, welcome.
You know, that pollinator business really fits with my office here. I'm just a plant lover and a gardener, so
I
had
love
to
that.
throw it out there.
Works on the literal and metaphorical levels. Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for agreeing to speak with me today because you do such interesting work at NLCAHR. And I guess we'll start by asking, for anyone who's not familiar with the NL Center for Applied Health Research here at Memorial, how do you fit into the Memorial landscape and what do you do?
Absolutely. So back in 1999, the last millennium, a group of people in the province got together and thought, what this province could use is a center that's dedicated to evidence-informed decision-making. So helping our healthcare system connect with the best research evidence. And NLCAHR was born. The Center for Applied Health Research started as a research unit within Memorial University's Faculty of Medicine. And it has blossomed and grown and changed and evolved over time to meet what we like to think of as the changing needs of our health system partners, but also increasingly of our community partners and community participants who are interested in health, well-being, and research related to both of those important domains in our lives.
I have a little bit of an insider view into the research exchange groups. I presented at one of the groups about a year ago now. And then shortly after that, you invited me to become one of the co-conveners of that group, which was the research exchange group on autism. So I have a bit of a sense of how the group I'm involved with works, but there are a lot of groups and they've been there a lot longer than I have. So how did that start and what is the reach of these groups?
Okay, so the center starts with it started with three fundamental programs. One was we used to give funding to researchers to support local research projects. We're hoping to reinstitute funding at some point in the future to support research. The second is that we do direct research at the center, which is our CRISP program, which serves health system partners who have a question to ask, a burning question on priority issue, and CRISP creates the research to answer those questions. And the third is our research exchange groups, which are a growing forum for building capacity in applied health research, in community university connections. And I like to think of them increasingly as knowledge exchange groups, because what we're trying to do through the program is to connect folks in the community who hold such important knowledge around what's going on in health and healthcare, in community services, in community practice, people with lived experience who bring such a tremendous expertise to the table, and research. So if we can combine the outside, what we always think of as outside the academy, with what's inside the academy, the idea was that we would be able to grow capacity for more and better research. So what the groups do, in essence, is they say, everyone is welcome. Do you have an interest in a specific area of research that really resonates with you? Of course, once you say the doors are wide open and all are welcome, people come in. But you have to take it a little bit further than that. You have to be a little bit intentional sometimes and say, oh, we have a lovely group of folks gathered around this table and they're all really interested in a subject, let's say aging, but who's not at the table? Do we have any older adults here who have lived experience of long-term care? Do we have older adults here who are caregivers? Or do we have young people who are working with older adults and want to understand the viewpoints of older adults in the room? So what we're trying to do is intentionally include as many people as we can in this process of information exchange. So what happens at the meetings is really determined by the group members themselves, which is what makes them so, I think, so appealing to people. Because if you're in a group and you have an idea, bring it up and we will try and do it. As you probably know through your own experience with the group on autism, we invite the conveners and the participants in these groups to tell us what they'd like to talk about. And then we facilitate and arrange virtual presentations, roundtable discussions, journal article sharing, whatever people have in mind as an activity for the group. And we make it easy for folks to participate. And I think the one thing we've learned, Andrea, about public engagement through this process is that you have to try really conscientiously to make participation easy for the people who are going to join you. So what we've found is accessibility through virtual meetings has really improved attendance. Another important philosophy underpinning the groups is that if we do have a neuroscientist speaking about brain chemistry, or we had for our group on aging, we had a wonderful scientist who does bench science around the tau tangles in the brain and their connection with dementias. We ask them to please speak in a language that we can all understand. And this is the knowledge translation piece. This is where we're trying to make complicated research ideas accessible. And I think the accessibility then lets people think, oh, I have an understanding, or I've gained an understanding about this. So we actually coach our presenters on using plain language whenever possible, avoiding jargon, and ensuring that anything that's presented at the groups is accessible to all audiences. The wonderful piece for our community partners has been an increasing interest in research. So I had a note from the former CEO of Stella Circle saying, my frontline staff are coming in talking about research, and it's a wonderful development. I had a convener of one of our groups who's worked in community her whole life decide on the basis of her involvement in these groups that she wanted to go out and learn how to become a researcher. So she went back to school and did a master's in community research. So the lovely kind of intersection of what community brings to the research table and what researchers bring to the community table has been a real unintended consequence, in a sense, of these groups, that not only is it just sharing knowledge around a topic, it's also sharing a worldview or an approach to how we can solve complex problems by gathering people around the same table to look at the solutions.
Well, that's fantastic, and actually leads beautifully into the next question I wanted to ask, which was to do with impacts. Because of course we all have to think about our impacts as researchers.
We do have to think about our impacts. So I'm going to start with an in-house impact, which is the impact on students who are presenting their work. So if you're a student who's pursuing undergraduate, graduate, or postgraduate research, the groups provide a forum for you to bounce your research proposals, plans, processes off a bunch of really interesting and interested stakeholders, and I hate that word, but interested parties who can give you really important feedback and connect you with community around your research. So if I am an academic researcher studying this is a real world example, how to support folks in palliative care settings to make sure that they're making plans for the end of life, I can take that research project and present it to the Research Exchange Group on Aging, and I can hear from people who work in palliative care, who are dealing with people who are at the end of life, and I can get a really sensitive and nuanced response to what I'm going to do for my research. So Supporting the research piece is an in-house example of impact. And I've had so many students tell me that their involvement in the research exchange groups really helped their research careers, not only because they got feedback on their projects, but they were actually able to meet people who worked in the field that they're entering. So they're able to connect with people who work in the field and ask them questions and get to know them. So it's a wonderful networking opportunity. On the community side, there are other impacts which are just amazing. So one of our groups is dedicated to the study of how animals and interactions with animals impact our mental health. So this group had a presentation from Elder Dog Canada, which is a national organization that helps older adults who have canine companions, but may have some mobility issues or have difficulty walking their animals. Or they may have older animals and it's difficult for them to get them to the vet. Or they may be entering long-term care and thinking, what am I going to do with little Biffy the dog? So there's all kinds of questions that come up around older adults, the importance of canine companionship to their mental health and their sense of importance and belonging in the world. So that group actually started an elder dog pod, and it's spelled PAWD, which is just beyond cute, here in St. John's. And they are working through the research exchange group in supporting seniors in our community with looking after their pets. And they've started an amazing local community program.
I think for a lot of researchers, and especially emerging researchers who are just sort of finding their feet, these are the sort of stories, like these are the things that dreams are made of, right? The idea of actually having this sort of impact within the institution, in the community. And so I know that for anyone who's interested, who's doing research in any of the health adjacent fields, there probably is a research exchange group already that would apply to their work. But if not, as you've said, new groups are emerging all the time. For someone who's completely outside of the health discipline, someone who's in engineering or philosophy or English literature, thinking, how do I do this? What would be sort of your quick and dirty tips for people who are starting to think about putting together this sort of a project to sort of mirror what's being done by NLCAHR?
Well, my first tip is always think really carefully about who will be impacted by your work, and make sure that any of the folks who will be impacted by your work are with you from start to finish in your project. This is a philosophy known as integrated knowledge translation, and this is where the research is actually led by the community. Who do I need to know out in the community who could be interested in this work, who might use it, who might help me recruit participants, who might help me understand the impacts of the work in the broader world? And seek out partnerships, collaborative opportunities, and reach across the aisle, which is, I always think of it as an American political term, but really reach across the aisle discipline-wise as well. We have folks who are already involved in our program from really across all faculties and schools at Memorial. I can't think of a faculty that's not represented. Everything is health, and health is everything is another side of it, right? So whatever you do will likely have some health impacts. So even if you feel that you're way outside the health realm, sometimes it's important to think how it does connect to overall improvements in the culture, improvements in society, and improvements in people's lives. I think we all want our research to make something better.
I think such an important thing for us to remember, especially those of us who are active students and researchers. It's so easy to get so siloed into our own discipline.
It's really funny you should use the term silo, because one of the testimonials about the Research Exchange Groups program was basically an emphatic, these groups smash silos, ! When I asked for feedback. And that's what we like to think of ourselves as doing, is smashing all those silos and getting everyone together and ensuring that, it's kind of cool to know what other folks are up to as well, right? So it's kind of interesting when you reach out and find that there are people in a field you would never have thought in a million years was related to what you do. that's directly related to what you do, right? So that's always a really cool outcome for this program as well.
Well, I could talk about this for another hour and a half, I'm sure, and I know you could too, but we're going to leave it there in the sake of having some sort of sense of the space time continuum. So I want to thank you so very, very much, Rochelle Baker, for speaking with us today and for telling us all about these wonderful opportunities to participate in some fantastic research exchange and also to reframe how we think about our own research and our relationships within and outside the academy. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea. It's been a great pleasure talking with you today.